Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. I'm your host Hayat, and today we're breaking down NBA slate matchups on February 23rd. We've got San Antonio Spurs at Detroit Pistons in what honestly feels like the best game on the slate, two teams in fantastic form colliding. We've got Memphis Grizzlies versus Sacramento Kings where the records look ugly but the situational angle is loud. And then Utah Jazz at Houston Rockets with a big number sitting there and some serious injury questions that could flip everything. No guarantees, no promises, just pure analysis and opinion based on how these games could realistically unfold if the matchups play out the way the data suggests. And quick pause before we dive deeper, if you like these breakdowns, hit that like button. It tells me these full NBA slate breakdowns are worth grinding out. And if you want to help the channel grow, hit subscribe. It takes a second for you, but it means everything to the channel. Now let's get into it and start connecting the dots. San Antonio Spurs at Detroit Pistons, the lean here is Pistons minus 2.5. Let me walk through why. The number sitting there is Pistons minus 2.5 with a total of 226.5, and right away I'm looking at this matchup thinking, this is easily the best game on the slate, both teams in fantastic form. Both teams feeling themselves, and I kind of love spots like this because it forces you to really decide what matters more, form or environment. The San Antonio Spurs have won 9 of their last 10 and they're currently on an 8-game winning streak. That's real. That's not fluky. You don't win 9 of your last 10 by accident. And they've been described as good on the road, which they have been, but they don't have the same numbers on the road as at home, which is expected. Most teams don't. That's just how the league works. But when you're riding an 8-game winning streak and you've won 9 of your last 10, you walk into any building believing you can win. And then on the other side you've got Detroit, and Detroit isn't just playing well, they've won 8 of their last 10, they're currently on a 5-game winning streak, and they've covered in their last 5 games. That's important. They're not just squeaking by teams. They're blowing teams out recently. And when I see 3-1-2-3-1 ATS, I can't ignore that. That's not noise. That's a team that shows up consistently from a betting standpoint. Now yes, the home record is 21-26 straight up, which isn't dominant, but what connects for me is the context. This game is being played in Detroit. If this matchup plays out at a neutral site, I probably lean Spurs to win outright. I really do. That's how tight this feels to me. It's almost like a Spider-Man meme matchup, young team on the come-up versus young team on the come-up, Spurs in the Western Conference, Pistons in the Eastern Conference, both in fantastic form, both believing. But the home court is the deciding factor for me. If this matchup plays out like two teams trading runs, matching energy, matching athleticism, then the edge tilts to the team in their own building. In Detroit getting Jalen Duren back in their last game after that suspension. That matters. Beef stew, Isaiah Stewart coming back from suspension. That matters too. Those are big bodies. And when you're dealing with Alien Wemby on the other side, you need those bodies. You need size. You need physicality. One path I see here is Detroit using that frontcourt depth, forcing San Antonio to score over size instead of through space, and that's where being at home matters. Now I also look at the situational spot. Detroit is in the middle of what's being described as a brutal 3-game stretch, Spurs, then Thunder, then Cavaliers. That's not easy. But here's the thing, this is not a team that comes out flat. They get up for every single game this season. That's part of why they're 3-1-2-3-1 ATS. So if this matchup plays out like a measuring stick game, two streaking teams, playoff level intensity, I trust the home team to bring that edge. The line sitting at minus 2.5 feels fair. At minus 2.5, a win gets the job done. I don't need margin. I just need Detroit to defend their home floor. And I would not be surprised if this jumps to minus 3.5. I really wouldn't. Recording Sunday afternoon, I could see steam coming in on Detroit. If it moves to minus 3.5, I'm still taking the Pistons. I'm comfortable there. Now if this creeps up to minus 4.5 or north of 4.5, that's where I lay off. That's where I start thinking okay, now we're taxing the number. And if it goes higher than minus 4.5, maybe we actually have to start looking at the Spurs because now the value shifts. But at minus 2.5, love the Pistons. At minus 3.5, still taking the Pistons. Anything north of 4.5. Stay away and maybe look at San Antonio. The total at 226.5 is interesting, but I'm not touching it. No play given there. If this matchup plays out like two hot teams trading efficient offense, sure 226.5 could be live. But if it tightens up and becomes more physical, especially with Duren and Isaiah Stewart back to deal with Alien Wemby, that total could get sticky. I'm staying off it. What connects for me more than anything is location plus form. Both teams in fantastic form. Spurs 9 of their last 10, 8-game winning streak. Pistons 8 of their last 10, 5-game winning streak, covered in their last 5, 3-1, 2-3, 1 ATS. The difference is the game is in Detroit. That's the swing factor. So yeah, the lean here sticks at Pistons minus 2.5. Memphis Grizzlies vs Sacramento Kings, the lean here is Memphis laying the points. Let me walk through why. Okay, so I'm looking at Memphis Grizzlies vs Sacramento Kings and right away I'm anchoring to this. I'm taking Memphis and I'm laying the points with the Grizzlies. Now let me think this all the way through because on the surface Memphis is 21-34 on the year and that doesn't scream, trust me with a number, right? They're coming off a 136-120 loss to Miami, so not exactly rolling into this one with momentum. And I know they've been described as banged up for the better part of the season, and they haven't even submitted their injury report yet, so there's uncertainty there. But what connects for me is the opponent. Sacramento is 12-46 on the year, 2-1, 3-5, 2 against the number. The losing streak continues. And when I say continues, I mean you can feel it in the margins. They lost to San Antonio 139-12, and I'm not fixing that number, I'm reading it how it is. Before that, 129-4 loss at New Orleans, 121-93 at Utah, 131-94 at Orlando. They are not keeping games close. The tanking is evident. That's not me being dramatic, that's what the score lines are telling me. Even when they snuck in the back door and covered against San Antonio, it felt accidental more than competitive. If this matchup plays out like Memphis just playing baseline competence basketball, I don't know how Sacramento stays in it. And yes, Memphis only beat Sacramento by 4 points in Sacramento just before the All-Star break on February 4th. That's important. I'm not ignoring that. They went into Sacramento and won by 4. So guys, the head-to-head isn't screaming dominance. But one path I see here is that context matters. That was before the All-Star break, and now Sacramento looks like a team unraveling. Memphis, even in a 21-34 season, has shown spots where at home they can handle business. Their last 2 home games. Beat Utah by 9, beat Minnesota by 9, and both of those teams are ahead of where I feel like Sacramento is right now. That's the key for me. If they can beat Utah by 9 and Minnesota by 9 at home, why can't they create separation against a 12-46 team that's not keeping games close? Now I'll be honest, there are a lot of spots where laying points with Memphis scares me. There are plenty of matchups where if you're asking me to trust a 21-34 team to separate, I'm hesitant. That's real. But the problem for Sacramento is they've become one of those teams I trust almost anybody to beat up on right now. Even if it was the Memphis Hustle, even if it was a lineup full of G League talent stepping up, I'd still question Sacramento's resistance. That's where we are. And then you layer in the injury situation. DeAndre Hunter mentioned as an addition, Zach LaVine out for the year, Domantas Sabonis out for the year. That's not small. Those are major pieces. You remove that level of production and structure from a 12-46 team and what are you left with? If this game turns into even a moderately competitive first half, I trust Memphis at home to eventually lean on them. I trust that environment more than I trust Sacramento's direction. Sacramento 2-1, 3-5, 2 against the number tells you even from a betting standpoint they've struggled to meet expectations. And again, yes, Memphis is banged up for the better part of the season, and yes they just lost 136-120 to Miami, but they've also shown they can beat Utah by 9 and Minnesota by 9 at home. That's the split personality of Memphis, unreliable broadly, but capable in the right spot. What connects for me is opponent quality. Memphis can be backed against bad teams. That's the phrase that sticks. And Sacramento right now fits that category. If this matchup plays out like Sacramento's recent stretch, 129-4 at New Orleans, 121-93 at Utah, 131-94 at Orlando. Then Memphis doesn't need to be elite. They just need to be steady. And steady at home has been enough to produce 9-point wins recently. So yeah, I would need a few more points to be swayed off Memphis in this game. That's how strongly I feel about the opponent gap here. I'm taking Memphis. I'm laying the points with the Grizzlies. And after walking through all of it, that's why the lean sticks at Memphis laying the points. Utah Jazz at Houston Rockets. The lean here is Rockets minus 11.5. Let me walk through why. Alright, so I'm recording this Sunday afternoon and the number sitting there is Rockets minus 11.5 with a total of 223.5, and immediately I feel the tension in this line because on paper Houston should smash this spot, but when you dig into it, it's not that clean. If this matchup plays out like pure talent versus instability, then yeah, Houston at home laying 11.5 makes sense. They've won 34 games this season. That's a good team. That's not a fluke sample. But then you see 24-31 ATS and it just sticks in my head because covering spreads has not been their forte this season. They've been bad at covering numbers. So laying 11.5 with a team that's 24-31 ATS, that's where the hesitation creeps in. Now let me flip to Utah because Utah is tricky. They covered in 6 straight games recently. 6 straight. That's not random. They went on that East Coast road trip right before All-Star break and they were covering everything. They were winning games. And I remember thinking what happened to Utah. But then their last 2 games were described as ugly. They lost to Memphis by 9. They lost to Trail Blazers by 16. And that's where momentum shifts. If this matchup plays out like the version of Utah that covered in 6 straight, then 11.5 feels massive. But if it plays out like the Utah that just lost to Memphis by 9 and Trail Blazers by 16, then 11.5 might not even matter. The injury piece is what really connects for me though. Lauri did not play in the last game due to illness. Keontae George did not play. 3 key pieces did not play. Their last game was February 20th. So I'm thinking okay, February 20th to now, if it's just illness, maybe Lauri is fine. But as I'm recording this, they're questionable. That uncertainty matters. If this matchup plays out without Lauri again, without Keontae George again, and with 3 key pieces sidelined, then Utah's offensive ceiling drops significantly. And against a Houston team that's won 34 games, at home, that becomes dangerous. And don't forget earlier this season the Jazz beat Rockets by 8. That's real. That's in the memory bank. So there's a little revenge angle baked in here. If this matchup plays out like Houston remembering that loss by 8 and wanting to respond at home, then I could see them leaning in. And in being back home matters. Houston back in their building changes the energy. What connects for me is location plus injury plus revenge. That combination creates one clear path where Houston separates. But again, 24-31 ATS. That's the anchor pulling me back. Rockets laying 11.5 is concerning because they haven't been blowing teams out consistently this season. They've won 34 games, yes, but they haven't been reliable margin creators. If this matchup turns into one of those games where Houston wins comfortably but not explosively, like 7 to 10 points, then 11.5 is a sweat the entire night. The total sitting at 223.5 is interesting because if Utah is banged up and missing Lauri and Keontae George again, you could see offensive struggles. But if this turns into a revenge-fueled pace game and Houston runs, that 223.5 could be in play. I'm not touching it though. I'm focused on the side. Jazz are banged up. Jazz looked bad in their last 2 games. Lost to Memphis by 9. Lost to Trail Blazers by 16. Houston has won 34 games this season. They're 24-31 ATS. They're back home. Earlier this season Jazz beat Rockets by 8. All of that creates this weird tension between what should happen and what Houston has actually done against numbers this year. This isn't my favorite play on the board. I'm more confident in Spurs versus Pistons. But if I'm forced into this one, if this matchup plays out like Houston controls from tip to final horn against a depleted Utah team that hasn't looked good in their last 2 games, then the path is Houston by margin. And because of that combination, injuries, form, revenge, and being back home, the lean sticks at Rockets minus 11.5. Alright, That wraps it up for all 3 NBA matchups on February 23rd, Spurs at Pistons, Grizzlies vs Kings, and Jazz at Rockets. As always, this is analysis and opinion only, nothing guaranteed, just me thinking through how these spots could play out if the injuries, the streaks, and the numbers unfold the way they're lining up on paper. Now I want to hear from you. Drop AZ in the comments and tell me which matchup you're circling tonight. Are you riding with Pistons minus 2.5 at home? Laying it with Memphis? Trusting Rockets minus 11.5 despite that 24-31 ATS? Let's talk it out. More NBA breakdowns coming soon, same raw format, same deep dives, same thinking out loud style. I'll see you in the next.